Welcome back, folks. To put a final cap on the Paranormal Activity retrospective, I'd like to try to lay out all the plot threads that we've seen through the series and explain the entire timeline of events as best as I can, anyway. The thing with found footage is that we're strapped to a set of characters who are really only aware of so much of what is happening, so if they got anything wrong or missed something, then we're in the same boat. It's kind of like trying to assemble a puzzle without knowing how many pieces are in it, and if all the pieces we have are even from the same puzzle. So, the story goes something like this. At some point in the past, probably in the 1950s, Julie's mother Lois makes a pact, trading the next male child of her line for material wealth and mystic power. She joins into a union with the demon Toby and becomes a member of a coven called the Midwives. Now, Julie is born in the 50s or maybe 60s. I'm not sure if she comes before or after the pact, but probably after. Julie's daughter Katie is born around 1980 and Christy in 82 or 83 because they're 8 and 6 in 1988. After Christy's birth, their father exits the picture and Julie begins dating Dennis in maybe 1987 or early 1988.
I've only been here for a few months.
Dennis uses his background in event videography to film the paranormal activity in their home as the sisters are tormented by a demon to force Christy to join the coven by participating in a ceremonial wedding at Lois's house in Moore Park, California. Now, while attempting to stop that ritual, Julie and Dennis are killed either by Toby himself or Lois with magic powers. Dennis's business partner Randy does not go with the family and makes it out of the movie alive. Be like Randy. For the next several years, Katie and Christy are trained by members of the Coven to develop magical skills in symbiosis with Toby. Christy is destined to birth a chosen son, and at some point, Toby will also be bringing them a special little girl like them. Then they're brainwashed to consciously forget about elements of their induction into the cult. Now, the degree to which this takes is inconsistent between the movies.
I ended up with it after Grandma Lois died.
In 1992, their house burns down and the family moves. And now, depending on your view of time travel, either a time loop is created where Toby is given physical form in 1992 before the house burns down, or the Coven burns the house down to set the stage for an alternate timeline where they're able to arrange the appropriate ritual to give Toby a body. In and around 1994, all the characters from the marked ones are born. Jesse and Oscar are marked at birth, and we know that Oscar, at least, is adopted. Skipping into the current century, Christy marries Daniel Ray following the death of his wife and goes to live with him and his daughter. Katie moves in with Mika in 2005 and stores several boxes that she inherited from Grandma Lois in Christy's basement. Later in that year, Hunter Ray is born, and he is the first male descendant of Lois, which satisfies the original pact. Now, after Hunter's first birthday in 2006, the Coven breaks into the Ray's house and steals the VHS tapes that are included in Katie's boxes.
I don't see that box of tapes that Katie brought over.
Now, I'm not really sure why they let her inherit them if they were just going to go and steal them back. But the break-in forces the Rays to install security cameras that document the paranormal activity that culminates in Toby attacking a dog. Seriously, fuck that guy. And also a partial possession of Christy. Daniel and the family nanny Martine perform a ritual which removes the demon from Christy and attaches it to another blood relative. In this case, Katie. When Katie reports disturbances during the night, Mika sets up a night vision camera to monitor their bedroom and captures paranormal activity leading to Katie's possession and his murder. Katie then walks to her sister's house, murders Daniel and Christy, and kidnaps Hunter. Martine, Allie Ray, Allie's boyfriend Brad, and the family dog all survive. Later in 2006, or maybe early 2007, Katie and the Coven take Hunter to Nevada and put him up for adoption. He's taken in by the Nelson family, who renames him Wyatt. In 2010, Ryan, Emily, and Leela move into a house in Santa Rosa that has been constructed on the same land as Katie and Christy's childhood home was on before it burned down. In 2011, after Wyatt's 6th birthday, Katie and her son, Robbie, move in across the street from the Nelson family. When Katie is supposedly hospitalized, the Nelsons take care of Robbie, who insinuates himself with Wyatt. Alex Nelson takes notice of odd activity in the house and begins recording these supernatural disturbances using a network of laptops, camcorders, and an Xbox Kinect. Robbie apparently acts as a liaison to introduce Wyatt to Toby, remind him of his original identity as Hunter, and somehow convince him to come back to the Coven. Although that may have a little bit less to do with Robbie than it did with the several minutes that Hunter spent underwater having a heart-to-heart with Toby. The entire Nelson family, including Alex's boyfriend, are killed. A few months later in 2012, and a few towns away, Jesse Arista turns 18 and graduates from high school. Using a camcorder, he and his friends Hector and Marisol track his stalking by a demon of some sort, due to the fact that his mother apparently participated in a ceremony performed by the Midwives Coven, marking him to join an army of possessed sons. While investigating their friend's attachment, Marisol and Hector do hook up with Allie Ray, who makes a brief guest appearance to drop some backstory. Jesse's attachment seems to be different than the arrangement that Lois and the other Coven members have, but it may not be. What we know is that Jesse and Oscar have similar histories, and the only other son that we've followed is Hunter, whose fate seems to be tied to Leela. Jesse is possessed and taken by the Coven, but Hector and Marisol enlist the aid of Oscar's brother to try to rescue him. They're attacked by the witches, and the rescue falls apart. While attempting to escape from a possessed Jesse, Hector travels through time to late 2006, where he's actually present the night that Katie is possessed and sees her kill Mika. Jesse kills Hector, and the Coven disposes of his body, but for some reason, not Mika's. I just picture a witch leaning on a mop next to Mika's body going, not my job. Jesse's father, grandmother, sister, and pet dog all survive the movie. Towards the end of 2013, Leela starts interacting with her imaginary friend Toby, and her father Ryan uses a series of camcorders and a special VHS video camera which can see spiritual/demonic presences to track these interactions while uncovering the history and motivations of the Midwives Coven. While attempting to exterminate the demon, Ryan, his brother Mike, and family friend Skylar, along with a priest, are all killed by Toby. Ryan's wife Emily escapes through a magic doorway to 1992, where she's killed by Toby in his physical form. Leela survives the movie, although her involvement with the timeline from 1992 onward is unknown. It's also possible that Hunter lives and goes on to a ponytail teacher-like position in the cult, or becomes a possessed son like Jesse and Oscar. There's a puddle of liquid dripping through the floor in the final scene after the Coven's ceremony, but it's never confirmed that it's Hunter's blood, or really even blood at all. So that's what happens. But there are still a lot of open questions around explaining how all of this works. The biggest holes in the series are around the adoption and second kidnapping of Hunter and how to reconcile the differences between the 4 kids that we've tracked. First up seems to be the magic age of 6. So why does the Coven wait until Leela is 8? While Katie is also 8 in Paranormal Activity 3 when Toby goes after her and Christy, she seems to be more of an afterthought. Christy is the absolute target of Toby, and she's 6. We do know from the first movie that demons become stronger when more attention is paid to them, so it's possible that the early presence of video in these other movies ramps up the haunting. In the first scene of Ghost Dimension, we see that Leela's drawn Mike with a very large mustache, which Ryan seems surprised to see. So we could take that to mean that she heard about Mike's coming and mustache from Toby, which means that they're talking before the start of the movie, so Toby could have been playing with her since she was 6, and the lack of attention and fear kept him pretty low level until 2013, when it got kickstarted by the special camera. Now another question here is why they don't need another Robbie-like ambassador to get Leela talking to Toby. Now I think it has to do with how the Coven has designed the house. See, Hunter was living in just a regular house and not something built by the Coven or on Coven land. So they needed someone to effectively invite Toby in. But with the new house, they were able to incorporate those Toby-ready design features that I poked fun at in the review, which allows Toby to just enter the house.
It's a very good entry point in here.
And while we're talking about Robbie, aside from being just a weird kid, Robbie's presence in the series is very confusing and raises several more questions. The directors of Robbie's movie claimed that Robbie exists in a role that the Coven has of some sort of ambassador, implying that the standard operating procedure is to put their kids up for adoption and then get another kid to pull them back in. But Robbie is the only one of these that we see, and seemingly no one ever came to collect Jesse or Oscar. So the only way to really fit these together is to assume multiple classes of kids, kind of like the military has commissioned versus enlisted. So marked ones like Jesse and Oscar are demonic foot soldiers, while kids coming from deals join the Coven as officers. They might go through a role like Robbie, ritualistic use like Hunter, and might even end up like the teacher from the tapes. Otherwise, Hunter is a one-off and they needed Robbie because they panicked and didn't know how to handle the kid. But given that they know Christy will have a son and had him slotted in for a ritual at least 20 years before his birth, they had more than enough time to figure things out, so it makes very little sense that they'd be unprepared. They raised Katie and Christy in the Coven for several years, so we know they're ready and willing to raise kids if they need to do so. So the only reason to go through this crazy double adoption process is because it's their regular way of doing things. Now, why is beyond me. Maybe they need them to be non-magical to be of use later. Finally, what's going on with Hunter, Jesse, and Oscar? It seems like there's big differences here. Hunter's parents are killed when he's 1, and he's adopted and then taken again at 6. Jesse's mom died, but he's grown up with his father and grandmother until his possession at 18. Oscar's parents presumably died as well, but he was adopted until his possession at 18. Hunter is odd because he's re-kidnapped, but Jesse is also an outlier because he's the only one that's not adopted. But what I think is that the midwives are established to not tie up loose ends very aggressively. Like when Allie Ray survives the second movie, they don't track her down, so she's able to meet with Marisol and Hector some years later. So what if Jesse's father was away when his mom got possessed and took him to the Coven? Both Oscar's parents were killed, no one unrelated would be able to assume care, same with Hunter. Allie was a minor, so she couldn't take care of him, but Jesse's dad would be able to, and if he was away during the possession, he'd be unaware of the supernatural and could give Jesse just as normal of an upbringing as any other family. So why not just leave him with his dad? Yeah, it's a stretch and assumes a certain bit of laziness on the part of the Coven, but I think it's certainly plausible. The final 3 movies are where the series continuity really takes a dive, and it becomes harder to reconcile them with each other than with any single one of the original 3 movies, especially if we stick to only what's in the movies. Unfortunately, they're also the ones with the biggest elements of this mythology, otherwise all you've got is straight up deals with devils. But found footage provides us with this double-edged sword where, by its nature, our view is limited entirely to what the characters film. So we have no way of knowing if any information in the movie is complete or even correct. And I think this gives us a bit of license to discard inconsistent bits and make our own assumptions even if they have no supporting evidence, as long as we keep a light touch. So that's what I've got for Paranormal Activity. Any questions or plot holes I missed? Do you have any different theories? Please take to the comments section below. And as to why the decorations have been disappearing from behind me during this video, that's because I'm packing them. I'm moving. I've bought a house and I need to figure out where in it to film future modern horror. Now I know I haven't been what anyone would consider consistent with these reviews, but this may throw even more of a monkey wrench into the works. Now I'll be back at some point, but I just don't know exactly when. In the meantime, I may resurrect the video on demand reviews, but I need a new name for the series. An existing podcast using the name Instant Screaming contacted me, and out of deference to their work, I've stopped using that name, so I need something new. Anyway, thank you all so much for checking out some modern horror. Cheers, folks.
Who's that creeping through my window? Who's that creeping through my door? You see, I know lots and lots of folks around these parts now, but I ain't never seen you before. I hear you creeping through my kitchen. I hear you creeping through my den. I'm starting to get the shakes now, Jack. You see, I don't know where you've been.
It's like trying to assemble a puzzle without knowing how many pieces are... Gordon, stop.